Welcome to the Encouragement Engineering Podcast, where we combat the negativity that inundates our daily lives with a positive perspective and positive action. Today's guest is Tyler Foley. Tyler Foley has been acting in film and television since he was 6 years old and is an accomplished film and stage performer. He has appeared in productions including Freddy Vs Jason, Door to Door, Carrie, and the musical Ragtime. Tyler is passionate about helping others confidently take the stage and impact an audience with their stories. He is currently the managing director of Total Buy-In and author of the #1 bestseller, The Power to Speak Naked. Leveraging his experience as a consultant and keynote speaker in a health and safety industry, Tyler brings a unique perspective to the realm of coaching and mentoring. Having made vocation of forging strong and sustainable relationships, Tyler has been able to facilitate consensus and harmony among disparate groups, relying on his background in highly pressurized and demanding environments. With his distinct and direct style, Tyler Foley is emerging as one of Canada's sought-after leaders in the field of public speaking for personal and professional development. So please welcome to the show, Tyler Foley. Tyler, welcome, and thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Bob. It's an absolute joy and a pleasure to be on the show.
Well, thank you. And let's go right into it, because you have an interesting background being an actor, as well as what you're doing now with safety and speaking to large audiences. Tell us how you got to where you are.
Oh, man, it's a circuitous journey, so I will try to keep it short for you. I think it started when my father passed away when I was 6. I had done a couple of school plays right early on in the first grade with like Christmas pageant type stuff. And my father passed away early February in my first year of school. And I think kind of a combination of having done some performance stuff and being one of the few kids who kind of wanted to do it and was really excited to be up on stage. My mom and my uncle were kind of looking for outlets for me to, have something to keep me occupied, type deal. And theater just kind of came about. And that migrated into film and television. And so I really pursued acting for a very long time. I went to a fine arts high school. Yeah. And when I was 17, I actually had a mini stroke, some kind of an event. And I lost the use of half of my body. So my face was paralyzed. My body was paralyzed. I couldn't walk, couldn't do a lot of stuff. I was in the midst of performing in a musical at the time. So I had to withdraw from the musical and basically thought that my career was over, and spent quite a number of months doing really, really intense physiotherapy, trying to get back to a state where I could actually go back and perform. And then I ended up moving to getting the use of my face and body back, thankfully, moving out to Vancouver and pursuing more professionally acting. So instead of being a hobby that I did in between school, it then became my vocation of choice, and it was all I really did. And that led to doing stunts, and stunts led to getting to do some really crazy things and meeting some really interesting people. And then as an actor, you're never just an actor. So I got a job working for one of the larger airlines here, and strictly because then it allowed me to have flight passes so I could fly down to LA for pilot season. But it also gave me the luxury and the joy of being able to fly anywhere else that I wanted to. So then I started to explore and see the world. And one thing led to another. I decided to retire at 25 because, it's an exhausting thing when you're an actor for, at that point, coming up 20 years, like, got to take a break. So I retired from that, took the money that I'd made in acting, and went back to school, got a geomatics engineering degree. So map making, surveying, who don't follow the geomatics crowd. And that led to building my first business. That collapsed really rapidly. But when you're in the geomatics industry, your primary client is the government. And with the government, they want you to have certain safety systems in place. So I had to take safety training. And then when the business collapsed, my friend said, well, hey, look, we've got this project going up at the oil sands up north. Maybe you'd be interested in being our safety professional. I said, why not? That seems like a really fun thing to do. So I had the background. I hope, very charismatic.
Yeah.
Hopefully people are picking up on that right away. And so I had an ability, an ability to develop a rapport very rapidly with people. And that led to a career in safety, which then led to safety training. And a lot of people said, well, how do you do what you do? And I said, well, I don't know. I've been doing this my entire life. And that has progressed into the speaker training programs that I've put together to help teach people to do the thing that I didn't realize I did naturally.
And that's so interesting, because people, when you're good at a natural talent, you don't realize you even have it. And like you said, people are saying, well, I don't understand how you can do that. And it just comes naturally to you, if you will. And then being able to teach them, there's such a value in what you offer to them, because you're doing it. It's a natural talent, and you get to really, I guess, pour into them your true experience for that craft. So that's an interesting segue into that scenario. Do you find yourself, when you teach audiences about speaking, because I'm not the type to get up and be afraid of getting up and speaking in front of groups, but do you find those people that may have that trepidation, is it a initial fear that they need to overcome? Is it just a perception? What do you find that may be for some people?
It's both a fear and a perception, but it's not what most people think. So interestingly enough, people aren't actually afraid of public speaking. Like if you ask somebody right now, are you afraid of public speaking? They would flat out tell you yes. Right. But with the very breath that they're telling you yes, they're lying, because they're speaking to you in public.
Right.
So none of us, there isn't a single person here. There might be very few super socially anxious people who legitimately can say that they're afraid of public speaking, but 99.999% of the planet is comfortable public speaking, because we have public interactions on a daily basis and we use our voice to communicate.
Right.
But where people do have a fear, and this is where the perception comes in, is a fear of judgment.
Yeah.
A lot of us have judgments of ourselves and judgments of others. And because we, in our nature, will instantly apply a judgment to people, we assume that people are instantly applying a judgment to us. And because we are often afraid to say the things that we ought to say or that we need to say, we internalize a lot of that dialogue, and then we create these stories within ourselves and within our head that then create projections that then become the fears of us speaking in public. And really what it is afraid to say the thing that needs to be said for fear that people will judge you for the thing that you just said.
Right. It's a vicious circle. I mean, I always find it interesting. The number one fear behind public speaking is the fear of death. So more people would be, afraid to speak in public than they would to be about talking about the person in the box.
Yeah. Seinfeld has a joke about that. You'd rather be the one giving the eulogy than the one in the casket.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. No, I want to, I can continue on. So I'm fortunate that I'm able to continue on. So why not enjoy it? It's interesting because a lot of people need to understand, I think, the value of their message and focus on that, and not, like you said, don't build these stories in your head and don't carry that with you, because 99% of the time it's never true. And I've done that with audiences. It's fun, especially with younger audiences. I'm scared to speak in front of people. I said, come here though. I said, if I look at you, how many eyes do you see? And they say 2. I said, good. Okay, now come up here. And I said, and I'll look back. Now, how many eyes do you see? A whole lot more. I said, yeah, that's the only difference. There's a lot more pair of eyes looking at you instead of just 2 when you're talking one-on-one. It's the same difference though. And so tell us about some of the groups that maybe you've helped, tell us some interesting stories. I always like to hear those, if you have some that you can share with us about, how people have grown, how they've gotten over some of those scenarios.
Well, I know as soon as you said it, I had 2 pop into mind. I had a really good friend of mine who is a brilliant clinical psychologist. And she, years ago, like we're talking 6-7 years ago, was convinced that she could do better with her therapy practice if she was able to do it virtually. And she had an entire thesis around it, from access, right? So remote access for a lot of the people in society who require access to mental health help oftentimes are distanced from it physically because of their remote location, which is why they're struggling with mental health.
Right.
And she thought, if there was some way that I could just talk one-on-one with them virtually, they don't need to come and sit on a couch.
Yeah.
Right. They don't need to be in a room with me. We just need to be able to have a conversation. But I can't do it over the phone.
Right.
Because I need to be able to see body language. I need to be able to connect with somebody. They need to be able to see me. We need to build the rapport through looking each other in the eye.
Right.
And she said, I could do this virtually. And everybody laughed her out of the room. There's no way that you could do it. And her problem was she was approaching people one-on-one, oftentimes over the phone. And I said, well, why don't you put together a talk on it? Put together a proposal and invite investors or people like that in. And she flat out refused to do it. Why? Afraid of public speaking.
Yeah.
And I said, you're not afraid of public speaking.
No.
And the funny thing is not only is she a therapist, but her specialty is actually sexual health. So she's a sex therapist. So she can talk about some things that are pretty awkward to do with random strangers comfortably. So I said, you're not afraid of public speaking. What you're afraid of is the judgment that's coming around it. You're afraid that people are going to say no or not understand or take you seriously. And so we spent probably 70% of our time together working on just building up her confidence so that she knew she was the authority, because I'll tell you, she was onto something.
Yeah.
And you look at where we are right now in 2021. This is a concept that she first proposed in 2014.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of pushback on it. The traditional mental health, that there is no way in psychiatry or psychology that you can diagnose a patient without having them in front of you. And she said, but they are in front of me. We have these beautiful tools. I can see these people. They don't need to travel to me. In fact, a lot of the people that we're trying to help, you have somebody who's agoraphobic. They're not going to leave their house to come to you.
Right.
Because they're afraid to go outside. They need help. How do you help that person? You can't constantly go to their house.
Right. Yeah.
It's inefficient in the time. So what do we do? So me and her worked together to overcome her fear. And really what it was establishing her authority.
Yeah. Right.
We opened up her story so that she could say why it mattered to her, why she felt this was impactful, give real world example case studies of where she had tested this out and had pushed it from theory to a practice. And now all she needed was help expanding it. And then she put it together a forum, invited 50 of the top minds in North America that could come and were interested in supporting her, and was able to, as you said, now have a dialogue.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I worked with her was stop looking at the room. Like, don't be worried about the number of pairs of eyes that you have on you.
Right.
Talk to the most friendly face that you're there and keep coming back to them as a center focus, and get the questions and answer and come back. And so she, instead of being a presentation, it became a dialogue between colleagues.
Good.
And she just talked one-on-one with them. And now the great thing about that is she took what was a decent practice. I mean, she was probably earning low six figures, had a steady calendar of clients, but she saw this big vision of a company that she wanted. And because she was able to do that presentation and then a few more like it, and talk one-on-many instead of one-on-one, and have other people counter the dissenting opinions.
Right.
She was able to then rely on the energy of the room to be like, no, this is a good idea. And so anybody who would stand up and be like, well, what about this? She could either respond to it or somebody else could come up with the idea. And it created this great dialogue within the room.
Right.
And she was able to fundraise very rapidly over $1 million and expand her business to where today, especially in the last 18 months, she was set up. She was already online. She was already doing it. She had the processes in place and she had the team. So she had grown. I think she has over 20 counselors now that are on call with her process. And so they come in and they phone. They do a certain percentage that are pro bono and free.
Right.
And because they do that, then they get some government funding. They have really good promotion. And then they are able to charge And a really interesting story that came out of it, she did free counseling sessions for this one client of hers that couldn't afford it at the time.
Right.
But because she was able to counsel them through the difficulty, they were able to then reintegrate into society, make money and a living. And then they paid her recently. She blew her away. They sent a check, no note or nothing. Just here you go. Thank you for the help. And I think that's my biggest reason for doing it is I have this skill set and I don't do a lot with it.
Right.
You know, I've been on film and TV. I'm just a puppet. Right.
Right.
I'm here for
script.
Mindless entertainment is all I've used my powers for. But if I can teach people to tap into their ability to use public speaking more effectively, in this case, grow a one-on-one practice to a 21 on many practice, and be able to elicit funding and support and word of mouth and get it out there, then I've done a little bit of social good myself. And so that's why I do it.
And the strength you're able to provide for people in those scenarios is incredible too, because that, like you said, it's just reassuring them they have the power within them, that they're validating their knowledge. And that's a great concept, because some of the topics you talk about, I mean, like a safety industry, there's always a pro and a con to that. I mean, no matter what you do, I mean, safety, there's certain things that just do it the right way, because the con is you're going to get hurt, you know, or die. And that's not a good option. So, you know, what is some of the reaction? I can just picture you. Are you blunt as a pickaxe, if you will, and some of the topics that you talk about? Because safety is not something you mess around with.
No. And the funny thing is safety, the safety industry itself is so misunderstood, and I'm definitely a maverick within my own thinking of it. So I know some very, very learned, very competent, and incredibly dedicated safety professionals, and they see the world differently. But where I am effective in my safety is taking what can very often be very abstract concepts and tie them into communicating to people so that they understand it, really boiling it down to why do you do the thing that you do, and why are you opposed to this change?
Right.
Like, why do you fear the change? Why is this so difficult? And getting people to discuss it. And one of the most effective techniques I learned as a safety professional is to stop running the meetings myself.
Man, talk about this. This is good. Expand on that.
I don't. So, you know, they got to run a toolbox talk. We got to have this toolbox talk this morning. It's going to be 15 minutes. We're going to cover off what we're going to do today. Right. And you always have the foreman or the safety dude standing up and and you get this from the workers, and all they're thinking is, okay, this is wasting my time.
Right.
I could be out doing the thing you're telling me that I need to do. Or they're thinking, did I pack my lunch today? What is lunch today? When is a cigarette break? How many cigarettes have I had today? When do we get to run to Tim's?
Right.
You know, like that is what people care about there. Because really what you, me, anybody, whoever's listening to this right now, you're all thinking about, well, how does this apply to me?
Right.
Right. It's the great radio station, WIFM. Right. What's in it for me? And when I discovered this trick, really, to be like, okay, you know, what are we doing today? I knew what we were doing today, but I needed to find out if they knew what they were doing today. So I asked, what are we doing today? And then somebody would be like, oh, well, we got this, and you got to do this, you got to do this. I said, okay, so what are some of the hazards that we could run into? Oh, well, you'll have this, and you'll have this, and you'll have this. Great. So what are we going to do about it? What's working for us? What have we done that has kept us safe previously?
Right.
What could go wrong with that? And then just, I'm the authority. I know what the answers are. But if I just tell somebody, right, you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, you feed him for life. If I am able to pull out that information from them, it's a check for me that I know that they know what they're talking about.
Right.
I know what they're about to do and how they're going to get on with their day. and I'm able to course correct anything that is a deviation from what I have as an expectation.
Right.
And I can set that up. So I saw actually a really cool stat on this. If you want to have an effective presentation, so they polled a whole group of people, and what was an effective presentation for you? If your audience is speaking more than you as a speaker, the level of engagement is at 92%.
Wow.
And if you are doing the primary majority of the speaking, the engagement goes down to 78%.
Right.
That's a significant gap.
Yeah.
So if you can have people, ask the questions and guide it along, your engagement's higher, your attention's higher, the level of participation and the level of acknowledgement of your idea becomes that much more higher because they think they've come up with it.
Right. Yeah. And that's always a good scenario, because a lot of times if you go into a corporate audience, it's filled with people that might have to be there. They don't want to be there. And like you said, they're looking at their watch. They're wondering when lunch is. They're wondering, okay, why do I have to be here? And yeah, it can be a hostile situation right off the bat. And when you turn that around, you're incorporating them into the whole scenario, and it's like their show. Like you said, you're giving them control, and they're thinking, wow, this is really cool. This guy gets me. He understands what we're about. And that engagement and that connection you provide with them becomes a great scenario. So good job with that. I love that. Hand it over to the audience, because like you said, you can steer it with the questions you ask, and they may not even understand that you're doing that.
Yeah. And that's what we did with my friend when she was pitching for the proposals. We had her ask a series of questions, and mostly designed to overcome the objections that she already knew they were going to have. I think the first question she opened with was, who feels that there is no way that you could hold a counseling session virtually? Right. And I think like 70% of the room was like, oh yeah. Yeah. And then she went, why? And everybody was firing their ideas, and we had her whiteboard it up, and it was brilliant because now everybody could see it. And then she could turn around and be like, this is a false assumption because of boom, 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 boom. Who here agrees with me? And then she got the people who agreed with her to say, yes, no, that's right, because I have found. And then the people who were like, no, 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 you're incorrect, she'd say, why?
Right.
And then that's the other real secret to doing that is everybody is right. Right. Okay. Everybody is right. Even if the premise or understanding is incorrect, there's at least a 10% nugget of truth in everybody's opinion. Right. So everybody's right. So if you can adopt a 5-year-old's level of curiosity and just ask why, a whole bunch. Why do you feel that way? Well, that's interesting. Let's see. Who feels the same way? Interesting. Who feels differently? Why? Yeah. And why is probably the most powerful word you can use in public presentations of any kind.
There's a theory about that, and I forget who it is that uses it. I think it's Dean Graziosi. He talks about it in one of his books. Ask the question to yourself why you do what you do, or why you want to do what you do 7 times, so you can get to that real answer. Because like you said, it gets deeper and deeper, and it gets emotional, and then it triggers your heart and it triggers your mind, deeper thoughts. And that's a key piece that we need to understand. No matter what we're doing, if we're trying to overcome something, I think, or build something, why do we want to do it? What's in our head? What's in our heart? What's that key ingredient that we really want to succeed at? It's not just about money. It never is. The money is just a tool. It's like a hammer. We're going to use it on the right product to do the right thing. What's really behind it? What would keep you up at 2 a.m. to continue doing what you're doing? I find that very interesting. So thanks for that reminder. That's a great, important piece of overcoming things, is ask that question why many times, and get like you said, get the different perspectives.
Well, and in safety, we call it the root cause analysis. Yes. And ironically, there's a whole bunch of devices or techniques to dive down to the root cause of an incident, or what drives, what has caused something to go against what we had expected. But my favorite one is actually called the 5 whys.
Right.
And the only reason I don't like the 5 whys is because it assumes that you're only going to ask 5, where in reality you can ask until you don't ask anymore. So my daughter is 5 years old and her name's Mckenzie. So I call it the Mckenzie Principle, because much like a 5-year-old, you want to ask why until your curiosity is satiated, because she never stops. Why, daddy, why?
Yeah. And that's a good way to think about it. We need to have that mind of a child again. We lose that as we get into adults. Why? Because we've been told no. We've been told you can't. We've been told because I said so.
Yeah.
Why did you say so? Let's keep going with that. Remind ourselves that we can continue to overcome whatever it is with that question of why. Much like you, I lost my mother when I was 6 years old. And, I didn't know why. I was 6 years old. It was cancer. I didn't understand that whole scenario of what it did to your body, lifestyle choices, etc., until I got much older. But, did that stop me? It was interesting because when I was, the day I was getting ready for her funeral, I can distinctly remember it. The sun was coming up and I was going into my closet to get dressed, and I realized she's not here, but the sun's still coming up. The world still turns. We have to continue. As much as, whatever happens to us in our life, what is that thing that keeps you driving? What is that thing that keeps you going? Tell us about some of those things, because I know not only as a speaker you come with these, as an actor you've come with overcome certain things. You've overcome, like you said, you lost your father. Things happen in our lives. What are some things you use to help you to keep going in scenarios like that? Because we need to keep going. As long as we have breath in our lungs, I think we need to keep going and share that greatness with others.
Yeah, I was lucky in that, again, growing up in the arts, you get exposed to different perspective and way of thinking. And my godfather and godmother are also in the psychology field, ran care homes, and they had a good influence on, a positive makeup of my mental development. And so one of the things that I learned very early on was to look for the grace in situations.
Wow.
Tony Robbins famously says it, right? Life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you.
Right.
And it doesn't mean I'm not one of those think positive type people. So I want to be really clear with the audience right now. I'm not one of those, everything happens for a reason and, they find the positives in it. No, like some things, right? Your mom dies of cancer.
Yeah.
Why do I have to spin that to a positive?
All right.
But I can tell you, my father passing away when I was 6 years old, and he died in a car accident, single motor vehicle incident, fell asleep at the wheel and hit literally the only building on a 3-mile stretch of road just outside of my town. Where I grew up used to be the staging grounds for the war in the Pacific during World War II.
Wow.
And all the Lancaster bombers used to load and leave from the airstrip just outside my small town. And one of the remnants of that was this munitions bunker that had 4-inch or 4-foot thick concrete walls and its foundation. And you don't get rid of that. That's just going to be there for forever. And my dad was a teacher, an educator, decided to take a sabbatical to work with my godfather to open up a restaurant. It was a dream and a passion of his that he wanted to be a restaurateur. And so they opened up this restaurant, and for 10 days straight, he was working 20-hour days prepping to get this done. But he was also commuting at the time. It was an hour and 20 minutes from downtown Calgary to our town.
Wow.
Single road highway. It was, a while ago.
Yeah.
And that takes a toll on somebody.
Right.
And he fell asleep, veered off the road, smashed the only obstruction. If you could come and see this road, it is farmer's fields for as far as you can see. He hit the one thing that would be a fatality. Anywhere else, you would have just bumped along and woke up and been fine.
Yeah.
I know, because I've gone off that road when I was 16 years old, going too fast on it, spun out my car, and went off the road and ended up in the field and needed to be towed out. And I remember laughing, thinking that's ironic.
Yeah.
But so do I have to find the good in that? No, but there is grace in it.
You're right.
And when my father passed away, everyone rallied around my mother. She got incredible support, including that of my godfather and my godmother. I have a younger sister, and people really wanted to make sure that we were okay and that my mom was okay. My mom, because she needed to make ends meet, took in a lot of boarders, and we had a nanny, all female. So over the course of my, school career, I lived in a house with 8 women. My mother, my sister, and a cycle of 6 nannies and boarders who were in various different rooms. So I'm very, very in touch with my feminine side. Yeah. It also helped that I grew up in the arts, so that had an influence into it. Because I grew up in the arts, I have a different idea of how the world is put together. I got to learn this incredible skill.
Right.
I've had the chance to express myself. So although I don't think my father passing away is a good thing,
right,
and I don't need to find the positives in it, I would rather find the grace. And I think when you can frame it that way, you have a little bit more freedom and luxury to know that, yes, everything does happen for a reason. Life happens for me, not to me.
Yeah.
That this was an event that occurred, but it didn't define my life. But man, did it help give it a trajectory.
Right. That's a good way to put it. And I appreciate you helping us be reminded of that, because it's not always, okay, this event, that's bad. It is like you said, it's a grace to change your trajectory. It's a grace that you have a moment to think about, learn from, and grow from. So thank you for that reminder. It's a good perspective with that. Well, Tyler, tell us where people can find out more about you, where they can get a hold of you on the internet and your website, things like that.
Well, I would love it. If anybody is curious to know how I do what I do, go to SeanTylerFoley.com, SeanTylerFoley.com, and click on the method. I've got a download there. It's 5 simple steps that I've learned over 35 years of public speaking that anybody can apply within 24 hours to gain more confidence and feel better and find their story so that they can go out and do what I do. So it's a real simple thing, and they go to SeanTylerFoley.com, click on the method. It's the first thing that pops up, and I would love to help them out. It's free download, and I welcome them to it.
All right. Well, we'll make sure we definitely put that in all the show notes so people have that contact information for you. Is there anything else, another message you might want to tell people?
Yeah. If I could leave your audience with just one thought, it's to remember that you are the authority. That at any given point, your life better than anyone else. So if you get a chance to speak or tell your story, embrace it, because nobody knows you better than you. You are the authority. And if somebody asks, that's an invitation to tell your story, and your story matters.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for that. And thank you for being a guest on the Encouragement Engineering podcast. I really appreciate your time, insight, and the value you give our audience. So Sean, thank you again for what you're doing. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you, Bob.
All right. You have a great day.